Hey guys, welcome back to Game of Thrones Weekly. Hold on to your onions because we were talking about Ser Davos.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome.
All right.
welcome, guys. This is Game of Thrones Weekly. Game of Thrones is over, but we are not done talking about it.
Are we ever done talking about Game of Thrones?
Are we ever
Honestly,
I mean, I'm not gonna be done talking about it. I'm gonna be talking about it for the rest of my life. Maybe I'll be studying it for the rest of my life. Who knows? My name is Amber Plaster. You guys might recognize me as your chat maester for the last season of Game of Thrones. I'm super excited to be covering individual topics every few weeks here on Game of Thrones Weekly, and you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Amber Plaster. And joining me is Zach.
hey guys, I am Zach Wilson. I'm here to help out with the chat and to help us understand what Amber is about to throw at us.
Down.
Yeah, I will be your guide from the completely unknowing.
Yeah.
I know nothing.
I'm gonna try
almost Jon Snow levels of nothing.
Okay, I'm gonna try to like use you to like kind of convince you, and hopefully I will also convince our audience at the same time.
Cool.
So this is going to be kind of an unusual show. So this is not the kind of podcast episode that you can tune in and out of. So unfortunately, you'll need to stick with me from the beginning. And if you miss the beginning, just hit that replay, because I'm gonna take you a little bit further out. I'm going to bring it right back around to Game of Thrones, I promise.
And those of you who are joining us live, I am in the chat with you. So if you have any questions, let me know. And even if we can't get to you right away, I will get to you before the end of the episode.
Yes. So Zach is the chat maester this time around, which I'm super honored to have you here. And we will make room for questions and answers. So basically on Game of Thrones Weekly, we can do whatever kind of topic we pitch here at the studio. And something that has been kind of like itching at me is this theory that I have about Ser Davos, and so I kind of wanted to use this time to break it down for you guys. And this came about because I wanted to find this theory on Reddit, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, how am I the only person who's thought of this? Why has no one thought of this?
That's how they all start.
Yeah. So I'm going to break it down for you guys. So, also, we are going to be doing Game of Thrones Weekly every Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is the time that our regular Game of Thrones would be airing. So next week is actually going to be Ryan Malady. He's going to be hosting his own Game of Thrones Weekly. So make sure to check in for that. Okay, let's get into it. So in this episode of Game of Thrones Weekly, it is curated by yours truly, and it is devoted to the theory that I developed while discussing the future, the rise of cryptocurrency, which I'm kind of interested in. I know that sounds a little bit out there for this, but I see a very clear connection to one of the characters in Game of Thrones, so stick with me. I got you on this one.
All right, drop it on us.
All right, so my theory is that Ser Davos is a metaphor for Tor. Specifically that George R.R. Martin wrote Ser Davos intentionally to represent Tor.
Tor being the internet
that is used
search
for the dark web.
Yes.
That is what it is known for, and it is misunderstood, and we're gonna break that down as well. So obviously, there are correlations between Ser Davos' nickname as the Onion Knight and Tor's proper name, which is the Onion Router. Ser Davos doesn't technically have a warrant out for his arrest, but he stays low-key, and Tor isn't technically illegal, but it stays real low-key. So let's just cover some basic terms before we get into it, and then I promise I'll bring back everything full circle. So what is Tor? Tor is a free software for enabling anonymous communication. The name is derived from an acronym from the original software project name, the Onion Router. So Tor directs internet traffic through a free, worldwide, volunteer overlay network. Okay, so what is an overlay network? I promise, I'm not gonna leave you hanging, guys, I promise. So it's a little bit complicated, but basically, and for our Davos theory, let's suffice to say, an overlay network is a computer network that's built on top of another existing network. So kind of like how we built our computers on top of phone lines. Basically, that's the theory of that. So I kind of took that to mean like, oh, you know how like King's Landing is built on top of the sewers that Tyrion brought. Oh gosh, I don't even know the whores into town. I don't have a better word for that. What would you?
His whore tunnels?
Yeah, his whore tunnels. Trying to think of a nicer way to put that, but
look, I don't think you have to be nice about it. That's what they were. They were whore tunnels, and if that sounds dirty, it should, because we're talking about Tyrion.
Yeah, so
he was a dirty, dirty man.
Great. So that's what it reminded me of, the overlay network. Okay, back to Tor. Tor directs internet traffic through a free worldwide volunteer overlay network consisting of more than 7,000 relays to conceal a user's location, usage from anyone conducting network surveillance or analysis. So using Tor makes it more difficult for internet activity to be traced back to the user. This includes like visits to websites, online posts, instant messages, and other forms of communication. Tor is used to protect personal privacy of users, as well as their freedom and the ability to conduct confidential communication, something maybe a little more confidential than sending a raven, you might say, but keeping the internet activities from being monitored. Like, Tor isn't perfect. In fact, it's kind of awkward to me because it runs on Linux, which is a super old system that I don't know very much about, I will admit, because I'm kind of a lazy Mac user, so how about that? Tor does not prevent an online service from determining when it is being accessed through Tor. So if you were to like use an email on, say, your Firefox browser, your email would be able to see that you are accessing their service on Firefox. The same goes for Tor. So to recap, Tor, aka the Onion Router software, aims to conceal its users' identities and their online activity from surveillance and traffic analysis by separating identification and routing. It is an implementation, of onion routing, which encrypts and then randomly bounces communications through a network of relays run by volunteers around the globe. So now that we understand what Tor is, basically, let's cover another term, and then I promise we're going to bring it back around to Ser Davos. So onion routing. Onion routing is a technique for anonymous communication over a computer network. In an onion network, messages are encapsulated, such a good word, in layers of encryption similar to the layers of an onion. Yeah. So, side note, when you encrypt something, it basically just means to encode or cover up. And to me, that works perfectly for somebody who might be a smuggler, you know?
So you think this is like the different like layers of Ser Davos like hiding his past? Yes,
and others. Because he smuggles good and bad things. Yeah. So onion routing was originally developed in the 90s by the U.S. Naval Research employees to protect U.S. intelligence. Sound familiar? Like how instead of like sending a raven in Game of Thrones, you might be better off sending a trusted, hardly traceable spider to whisper for the right people for you. Okay, are you with me? You following?
All right.
Okay, see where I'm headed? So now that we have a basic understanding of what Tor is, let's answer a very popular question about Tor, which is Tor illegal? Just using Tor to browse the internet is not illegal. Hiding your IP address and browsing history is not, in of itself, illegal. However, many of those that use Tor use it specifically for anonymity because they are doing something illegal. Usually something real illegal. Usually something real dark, which is why it's called the dark web. So what is Tor typically used for? And to me, this is where it gets good, because this is where I started reading into it and being like, oh my gosh, it's just like Ser Davos. Oh my gosh, it's just like Ser Davos. So Tor has, for example, been used by criminals, hacktivism groups, law enforcement agencies, sometimes simultaneously, likewise, with agencies within the U.S. government that fund it and at the same time seek to control it. So basically the point here is to remember that like the goodies and the baddies both want Tor. So do people in Game of Thrones do with Ser Davos. Good people and bad people seek to use him literally all the time.
Yeah, I mean, between, like, obviously right now he's with Jon, who I think we could all agree is a good guy.
I think most people,
right?
Yeah.
But he was also definitely used by Stannis, who was questionable.
Yeah, real questionable.
Questionable at best, I think we could say.
So Tor is also used for illegal activities, for example, to gain access to censored information, and to organize political activities, or to circumvent laws against criticism of heads of state. Protecting the Red Lady, anyone? Helping the Red Lady birth a demon monster? Anyone? So Tor can be used for anonymous defamation. It can be used for news leaks of sensitive information, copyright infringement, illegal sexual content, selling controlled substances, which is kind of like the Silk Road incident.
Yeah, it's a black market. Duke Chronic in the chat points out that Davos had a black sale.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I'm going to bring it around to that too because I noticed it too. So we have the black market. We have Davos with the black sails. We later, once the U.S. government funds Tor, it gets the logo, which is the onion. And later, when Stannis forgives Ser Davos of smuggling, essentially doing his job, he gets to be knighted, and he chooses the onion as his sigil and sews it onto his black sails. So it just feels similar, kind of like they kind of got legitimized, like kind of near around the same time, like almost like at the very beginning. And also like it just kind of like reminds me of like, hey, I'm complicated on top of like my darkness, my dark past. So yeah, so we're not going to get into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because I don't want to be too misleading on that, even though that's super like what got me into this discussion. Tor has also been used to like brick the Internet of Things devices, which like I love, and there's so much to dissect about that because I can't really go too much into the Internet of Things without going into like Mr. Robot instead of Game of Thrones, so I'm not going to do it, but basically check out that show is what I'm saying. Basically, the Internet of Things is when regular objects get connected over the cloud, thus becoming hackable. So if a hacker got a hold of your smart fridge because they couldn't get into your phone, it's like a terrifying thing. So the reason I bring up the Internet of Things is because if Tor can be used to break it, then reason would stand that Ser Davos could in fact break connections on Game of Thrones.
Oh, like sever like relationships between people?
And communication. Like intercept things or fake things, kind of like how he went to go back and get Gendry and was like, oh, I have crab back there. You know, just kind of basically messing with the communication of things and concealing it in that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think, a smuggler, just in general.
That's true.
Can be used like to like anything that a smuggler can do is especially send messages, create forgeries, like all these things. It's like the life of a smuggler.
Yeah.
Concealing and delivering whatever you want.
But now that we've covered like the darkness behind Tor, I kind of want to argue the light side of Tor because it's not just for bad purposes. So Tor's users include normal people who wish to keep their activities private from government, or maybe oppressive governments who are trying to kind of have a dictatorship or communist rule or something like that. Or maybe they just don't want advertisements, on their emails, like whatever. Maybe they're just normal people. I don't know. But I found out that Tor is increasingly used by victims of domestic violence and the social workers that try to help them out. So when properly used, Tor can help people against digital stalking. And Tor has also been used by news organizations to protect the privacy of whistleblowers. Which sounds super familiar to me because he's essentially protecting so many people at once, Ser Davos is, while also kind of letting in the crazy. So Ser Davos is a reformed smuggler. We'll just cover a little bit about Ser Davos. He used his ship to sail the narrow sea, smuggling goods from the free cities to the Seven Kingdoms and back again. And I think that's really beautiful, being like, oh, from the free people to maybe the controlled government and getting the information back out again undetected. Kind of similar to how he, during Robert's Rebellion, Davos helped his number one boy, his BFF, Stannis Baratheon. Seems like ages ago that we even talked about Stannis, but he was Book 1, you guys. He helped Stannis Baratheon while he was under attack in Storm's End by delivering smuggled onions and other food into the castle, and the supplies helped Stannis' forces stay alive. So to me, this reminds me of how Tor can be used to help whistleblowers release their information in a non-threatening kind of way. So, yeah. This is, so you can you kind of, do you follow where I'm going with this? Okay.
Yeah, like, I mean, the smuggler thing is like the biggest connection to me, because it's like Davos is all about going through and being the underground in, like, if you could just say a battle. If there was a battle on the internet, for people's control, it would be through Tor.
It would be through Tor, because anything else could be controlled by a corporation.
Yeah. It's using it's the only way to use back channels, which is what Davos has been doing the entire time.
He is the back channel, it feels like.
Yeah.
I wonder if that almost works for the spider too, but I feel like for some reason he doesn't have as many abilities to, like, he almost like ascertains secrets.
Davos just, like, he kind of pops up in the places where you don't necessarily, like, he's just like, he's everywhere important.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, this is a really important part in the Westeros history, in the whatever this is eventually going to be called, when the
like the battles and the events, and
when the Maesters eventually on the last scene go full The Hobbit and are just like, a song of ice and fire, close. Davos will be like in all of these places, and like, this guy seems more important than anyone ever wagered.
Like how he was just kind of there when Jon woke up from the dead. You know, he just had to get the message out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but he's put himself, like, whether knowingly or not, he has made himself part of the fabric of this story in a deep way, where if he's not there, the world might crumble.
If he's not there to help facilitate it or know about it.
Yeah.
Or even weigh in on it.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of the impartial, trusted advisor of Stannis. R.I.P.
Yeah,
because
well,
he
it's like,
was so impartial.
how much faster would Stannis have fallen? Or, like, would Jon have been brought back to life? Or all of these things. And you could say, if, like, with Tor, like, because we know that it's been used to do some, like, dark stuff, like transferring of funds, like, maybe things would have found a different way to, like, raise an insurgency in another country, or like funnel like drug money across the globe. All of these things, it might have happened without Tor, but Tor got it there. Davos got Jon there and back
where he needed to be.
Yeah.
There
and back again. See, I made another Hobbit reference.
Love it. Yeah, so there's other similarities to me too, which is, you know, how Stannis rewards Ser Davos by giving him some land and knighting him. This kind of reminds me of how, like, the U.S. government funds Tor so that it can keep its own military intelligence sharp. Ser Davos chose the name Seaworth for his family's new house. Oh, remember when he had a family? That was sad. Seaworth was a reference to his smuggling past, and, like, snooty members of the older houses called Davos the Onion Knight for his old smuggling ways, but he embraced the title because Davos is not only a badass, he is humble too. He's a great character. And he proudly took the onion for a sigil and sewed it onto the ship's sails, which is like what the chat watchers were saying. And this reminds me of Tor because not only is it named the Onion Router, its extensions, or flags, if you will, instead of .com, are .onion. So how else is Ser Davos an allegory for Tor? Well, Davos has several sons who serve on his ship with him. One of his sons, Mathos, who, remember, in the show actually gets burned by wildfire when Jaime lights all the ships on fire, was a scribe for Stannis. So let's break it into Tor similarities. Tor, a.k.a. Ser Davos, has several users, a.k.a. sons, including the ones that work for the U.S. military, using Tor as an opportunity to write coded messages for the heads of government. So Davos is proud of his son's education, yet Ser Davos remains illiterate throughout the books and most of the seasons of the show until he meets Shireen. And even then, he's not fully literate, I don't think. So Tor, and just like that, Tor is proud of its users and the Tor project that helps people understand it better, but remains completely impartial, even blind to the stuff that goes on in Tor. So I kind of see a similarity between Ser Davos being illiterate and Tor being blind to like the good and the really terrible things that go on. And that's kind of what makes it beautiful to me, is that it's so impartial. I mean, Ser Davos is loyal to his king, and while Tor is freeware and it's not really loyal to any one government, which is, you know, again, the beauty of it, I would argue that Ser Davos is aided by his king, similar to how Tor is partially funded by the U.S. government. So it's kind of like, while keeping his users safe from the very government, it reminds me how Ser Davos works for Melisandre, yet, because he has to, even though he hates her, he aims to keep Stannis safe from her. He aims to keep Shireen safe from her. So it's just a beautiful little catch-22 that I enjoy so much. I'm going to take some time for questions from the live chat here in a minute, but I want to leave you guys with some of my favorite Tor Ser Davos correlations to chew on. And I would love to hear yours as well, because for some reason this topic just endlessly fascinates me, and I can't find it anywhere else on the internet, so I wanted to talk about it with you guys. So Tor is used to protect identity and freedom of communication. Even when Davos discusses the fate of Gendry with his BFF for life, Stannis, he stands by protecting the freedom of the greater good when Stannis says, what is the life of one bastard boy against a kingdom? And Davos says, everything. And this is so baller, because this is Stannis. This is his king. He would die for his king, and he's not giving up Gendry because he believes in the greater good. Like, he believes in helping everyone. So Ser Davos is just as publicly misunderstood and yet somehow equally trusted as Tor is to me in that instance. So anyway, I've made my case. Let's take some questions.
Yeah, so guys, drop any questions that you have in there.
Let me know your thoughts.
So Andrew Manford wants to know, like, when was Tor, like, around? Because, like, or when was it known as the Onion? Like, when did that first happen? And then, like, versus, like, when was
so the original
Davos introduced?
The original software for the original software was used on Linux to kind of create a package that you could download and share files, and then it became a community, and then it became encrypted and protected, and then it became the Onion router. So it kind of came about in the mid-1990s.
Okay.
And then it became properly named. It started getting funding. It started being so good at covering up communication that the U.S. government started funding it, and then it became Tor.
Got it.
So similar to how Ser Davos came from nothing. Started from the bottom, now we here. Came from, like, flea bottom, and then went all the way to being, like, the king's most trusted advisor. Humble beginnings, guys.
Got it. And so when was Davos first introduced in, like, the books? Because, like, so your theory, you think that this is not just, like, a cool facsimile, but, like, that George R.R. Martin knowingly...
I would like to imagine and, like, argue that George R.R. Martin wrote Ser Davos with Tor in mind, and I kind of just like to imagine that happened. And then right before we started the show, I was, like, still researching anything that George R. R. Martin had talked about Tor, and I couldn't find anything. But he did go on Conan O'Brien a few years ago and say that the secret to his writing is that he uses a computer for email and taxes and communication, and then he uses a completely different computer on Linux to write. Because it can't be hacked, because it's so old. He uses a word processor. And I was like, I believe it, because he just doesn't care. He gives zero cares. And I was like, well, if he uses Linux, first of all, it lets me know that he at least knows what Tor is.
Yes.
And how could he have a character that he loves so much and not, like, see any similarity. I don't know.
He's a sci-fi fantasy writer. I think it's safe to say he knows about Tor.
Yeah, right?
Especially if he uses Linux. It just implies that he's a big computer guy. Like, look,
at least aware of it.
I work with computers all the time, like Mac, PC. I don't touch Linux because I just don't have the time or like the need to use it. But if he feels the need to use it, like
and says that he writes all of his, like that's what he uses.
Yeah,
that's what he prefers. So I wonder if that's sort of like his tribute to an older 20th century way of communication.
Yeah, maybe.
Which he's talked about preferring before.
Christian Dash is wondering, do you think that Davos, and I'm curious, like I'll add this, like with this theory in mind, will Davos survive the war when all is said and done?
I think so. I think so. Especially with this theory in mind, I think so. Because if... I'm trying so hard not to bring cryptocurrency into this. We don't have time, you guys.
This is like the third time, unrelated, that I've talked about cryptocurrency this weekend.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's really great. Yeah, because it's becoming more and more secure and it's becoming global. And just because our government is ignoring it doesn't mean that it's not becoming powerful in the same way that just because King's Landing is ignoring the White Walkers doesn't mean that they're not growing in power. Not that the White Walkers are cryptocurrency, but I think that's more of an allegory for climate change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think Ser Davos is going to be around. He's already survived 2 battles, I believe, that he should not have ever survived. Also, he like washed up on a shore and was like sunburned for days, and still some pirate, similar to like pirating on the internet, literally saved him. I don't know. I think there's a few characters that I think are safe in Game of Thrones, and Ser Davos is one of them.
Yeah. Zia Sluwap wants to know what Linux is. Linux is an operating system, just like Windows or Mac, but Linux is an open source operating system, so that the idea anyone can edit it. It's just out there to be used, and there are different versions of it that are more like quote unquote official, but anyone can change it or use it and then upload their version of it for other people to use. That way it can grow as the community sees it fit. It's editable as you need it. You can adjust the system to whatever your needs are, provided you understand programming, which I do not.
I do not either. I know just enough to know that I should not be on there.
Yeah.
But it is slow. Also, something to note that Linux is slow. It takes a while, and it takes a while to get the information that you need compared to like Google Chrome or something that you would normally be using.
Well, it's an operating system, so like you guys can change it up, and like that's the beauty of it. Is like
I don't know. I was comparing it to a browser. I'm sorry. You're right.
No, that's the thing. It's like I think Tor might be
more of a
Tor might be a little slower since it has to go through all these back channels.
I think that's
and, like,
what I mean.
Root. But Linux is just like it's another way in. So like if you know programming well, you can change Linux. But going back to the thing we're talking about, I really like your theory. Just because of the importance of like, especially from a hacker's point of view, that Tor has on the world, and combine that with the Ser Davos as Azor Ahai theory, which of all the like literally
I do enjoy
every single character on Game of Thrones has now had an Azor Ahai theory about
Can you break that down for the listeners really quickly?
So okay, I'll do my best.
Just like.
I'm not expert because like I'll be honest, I'm not a book reader in this case. I am going to read all the books once the show is done. One version of the characters, that's all I need in my head.
It's all good.
But Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised, is like destined to make his like return, like an ancient warrior with his sword, Lightbringer,
and basically save the day.
Yeah, and so like the Melisandre lays out the theories like when the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. And so like born amongst smoke and salt, like Ser Davos is a man of the sea. There's your salt.
Flea bottom. There's your smoke.
Yeah.
I guess. If we're leaning into that theory.
And he was there at the big thing of all that stuff. He was there when Jon was reborn from death, which now that we have it officially confirmed that Jon is a is Aegon Targaryen. He woke a dragon out of stone from the stony hands of death. So it's a little bit of stretch. There's like a lot more. Like you guys can look
also,
it up online.
he was there to facilitate it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. He was the one who was standing there when Jon came back,
and also kind of guarding the door.
Yeah. So the thing is like all these like vague prophecy things. Like literally, like there's one that sounds equally promising for Jaime. That you can bend the words to apply to almost every character. Jon has it. Dany has it. But I like the Davos one because I like the idea of this, like the prince who was promised this super important thing, this super important person that's going to change the world, being the most unassuming of everybody. Yeah. Like, just like your theory with Tor, like this little known operating system that like most people do not pay attention to.
Yeah.
Has the potential to change the face of the planet.
Yeah.
If it's used in certain ways. And if you wield Davos appropriately, he might change history.
Absolutely. That's a really beautiful way of putting it. And I would love to see Ser Davos be the prince that is promised, almost because we've had we've had a lot of love and a lot of theories for Jaime and Jon and Dany. Like that's kind of been discussed openly in the show, you know, kind of how like, you know, we first see Dany and she's supposed to be promised this kingdom. Like we never really had any of that for Davos, and it just seems something more like Game of Thrones would throw at us because it would kind of be coming out of nowhere, and they kind of like a rags to riches story in Game of Thrones to kind of prove that even though you're of royal descent, so many different things like that you could never even see can ruin you in this show. And I think Ser Davos is one of them. Do you have any other theories? And while we're going over theories, I know you said you had one. All
right, there's one that I've like wanted to talk about because it's just like it's been playing where it's a conspiracy theory, which I feel like if we're talking about Tor is like appropriate to the themes of the evening. But this is more towards like the meta, like the real world stuff. Because everyone's like, everyone's questioning where's the next book? Like we have a year and a half probably.
Yeah, where's that book? Where is that book?
Where's Winds of Winter?
He's never gonna write it, guys.
Not to mention the book after that because it's not even the last one. And the conspiracy theory that I have is basically I am convinced that the book and possibly even the final book are written and sitting in George R. R. Martin's drawer on his Linux computer, his unhackable Linux computer.
Oh, on the on the word processor.
I'll add that into it.
All right.
But basically, it just stems from I was thinking about like HBO as a company has nothing to gain by those books coming out. In fact, they have everything to lose by the books coming out.
That's true.
Because like here's the thing, like if he releases the next book and people love it more than they necessarily love the show, because the show's been like great, but like people have had problems with this and this.
People love to complain.
But like if the book is better than the show, the next season might see a dip because people are going to be like, the book was better. They're going to be annoyed by that. They're going to start checking out. If the book is worse than the TV show, then people are just going to soften on Game of Thrones in general because they're like, it peaked. Like, what if the story's not good? They're going to soften on it. There's no positives for HBO, just purely from HBO, that for those books to come out. So I'm convinced that it's one of a few things, but the big one, I think HBO is just like paying George R. R. Martin just to sit on the books. And then once the show's done, it comes out.
They're just on the shelf?
He releases the new books, and people continue to talk about Game of Thrones for a month, for another. It continues the Game of Thrones talk even after the show's off the air.
That's true.
They have everything to gain by waiting 2 more years for those books to come out, and nothing to like. There's no loss by waiting.
Okay.
And he keeps putting out more content. He's writing more Game of Thrones lore consistently.
That's true.
He keeps putting out new like little novellas and things. So like he's not stalled completely, and he has to know where the story is ending because he's already communicated that with the producers.
I can see how you would think that, especially since HBO has invested so much money into filming this in so many beautiful countries and locations. Like, they can't really afford to have interest dip in the last season. But what does George R.R. Martin have to gain? Because I just feel like he's just the kind of person who just doesn't care. I feel like he will just release whatever he wants to release because he's crazy like that. I mean, like the Red Wedding. He doesn't care what anyone wants.
He doesn't care. Like, he wants to tell his story, but, I mean...
What does he have to gain?
Whatever, $50 million. I don't know, whatever, like, HBO
he's already
is
a
paying
multimillionaire.
him. It's true. It could be that creatively he wants the show to be successful in that sense. So there's the more positive version where he sees that perspective as well and is like, okay, this is best for the show that he is an executive producer on. And
I can see him being on board.
Or there's the other, I mean, there's the, to combat my theory here, like that he wants to see reactions to the show. And maybe that would to change, like, oh, people reacted this way to this. Well, I want to see how they react to this.
Man, I wish. Except for
sort of reverse of what Walking Dead did, where it's like, okay, well, I saw how people reacted to the comics, and then Kirkman saying, well, I'm gonna. What happens if the characters do this instead on the show?
Okay.
Where he just made slight differences creatively, like where it was the same characters, but in a slight tweak of the circumstances, and then what happens if it goes down this road?
That's a good theory, and I'm gonna be really creeped out if, like, right after the last season, they're gonna be like, and releasing the next.
I'm telling you, it's gonna happen. Watch. I don't know when. Like, I just keep thinking of Rick and Morty. It's like a year. We'll be back in a year and a half, or longer.
Or longer.
That's Game of Thrones at this point. But and like Langley Amelia in the chat. Hey, Langley. I'm still understanding the rush to finish the show in 2 really short seasons. I think it's that they basically from what I can see of it, just like from a production standpoint, I think they had basically 13 beats that they had to hit between like the beginning of last season and the end of the show, and with a limited, like, they have a big budget, but like look at the difference in like how much they did in terms of battle sequences. So they were like, we're going to hit these beats in each episode. The episodes are going to end here. And that's just that's where the episodes end. And however long they take, like the episodes were 81 minutes, 71 minutes. They're not 60-minute episodes of television. So
I prefer the shorter seasons. I think that you're right. I think they have beats that they have to hit. And I would rather be left wanting more than having filler. I mean, I've already had people complain about one of the episodes being filler, and I loved that episode. And I was like, geez, can you imagine if there was like 5 more episodes?
I mean, this season definitely didn't feel like filler. They felt like they were going at a breakneck pace.
I mean, for me, I agree. Yeah. But
either way, I mean, only time will tell. And if he releases it like next week, I'm just going to be like totally wrong. But I don't know. It's just,
but
it's
then
just a
we'll all
conspiracy
be happy
theory.
because we'll have more books to read.
No, because then I'm going to have to like boycott the internet again. Like waiting until the next season. That was the thing for TV watchers, people who started watching in TV, and like for me, who like I just prefer one form of a story, and then I can move on to a second once the first one's done. I just don't like to have 2 versions running around in my head at the same time.
I kind of did that with Harry Potter. I was like, I have to read the books first. I can't even look at any of these movies first.
It was just I got hooked on the TV show, and then I didn't want to like change. Like there's differences, and I didn't want to have both of them. And then I have to wait. But which one was it? It was in the.
I mean, I will say that like I know there's lots of spoilers online, but like I think that you can still like catch little weird things about the book online and still go back and read book 1 to the newest book and still like glean so many new things.
We'll see. When the show's done, I'm gonna go back and read all of them.
Yeah.
In one big fell swoop.
So we won't be seeing Zach for a year and a half.
As soon as the show finishes, because that's when the next books will come out.
Okay, he's calling it, and I agree. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, as we get ready to close out the show, if you enjoyed this episode, won't you share it with your friends? I would appreciate it. This is also a podcast as well as we are on YouTube. If you catch us live, you can be in the chat with us. And if you don't, you can always hit the replay. Also note that Game of Thrones Weekly will return next Sunday. Same time, same place, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, with another host to cover another Westeros topic. So who's on deck for next Sunday? It's going to be our very own Ryan Milady. So be sure to check that out. And also, if you're into other crazy fantasy shows with the undead, Walking Undead, make sure to check out Fear the Walking Dead after show, which is coming up next right here on AfterBuzz TV on their YouTube channel. Chatmeister, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Tell me I'm completely wrong on my conspiracy theory, or just keep the conversation going. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, all places on the internet at that Zach Wilson, ThatZachWilson, and on AfterBuzz TV in a couple of months. In November, I will definitely be back for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after show.
Nice.
Coming in for Strong for Season 5. I think there may be some other stuff coming up between now and then. Stay tuned to my Twitter for updates.
Awesome. Thanks for helping me out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me in.
Yeah. I am your host, Amber Plaster. You guys can look at my weird blue hair on Twitter and Instagram at Amber Plaster.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.